Welcome to the SEO Insider with your host, Seth Price, founder of BluShark, taking you inside the world of legal marketing and all things digital.
Welcome, everyone. We are thrilled to have Ray from EvenUp, co-founder and COO. Welcome, Ray.
Thank you, Seth. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on.
I am so excited to have you here because I feel like you guys were like, had sort of paid your dues, and the moment that the rest of the world woke up to AI, you're like, oh yeah, this is what you've been looking for the whole time. So, really, congratulations on the run the last few weeks.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely recall a time where we used to pitch AI to lawyers, and they would respond to us with like, how is AI even going to help us at all? Like, how is AI even supposed to help me do my job? What is AI?
And then now, I got to tell you, they frankly still are. I still have that reaction. I was just talking to you before we got on, and it was just in the Washington Business Journal, and it was like talking to them, basically the legal community as a whole. Forget about the plaintiff's world that you circle around, right? Which is a little bit more entrepreneurial. Yes, the owners of organizations know that it needs to happen. Some do, some don't. But the idea that as you go into the trenches, there's great resistance. And the thing that my talking point has been, look, AI is really cool. And just like when I was at US Law in the late 90s, trying to tell people they needed a place online, they're like, why would we ever go online? We have yellow pages. That was literally the answer we got. We had to fight to get somebody to give them a free directory listing or a free profile, more or less get them to pay, God forbid. That was like, that was the cost of acquiring a customer was just so crazily expensive. But what strikes me, and like ChatGPT has been the first manifestation for many people, not of AI going in the background. Like you love it when Google tells you how to finish your sentence, putting you, moving you to BCC, they know what you're about to say before you do. But I feel like what we saw, this is the convergence of, okay, cool technology. It's going to go huge. Right now, people are using it kind of sloppy. We already saw the high profile case of a lawyer using it badly. That said, it is a tool. And just like you wouldn't turn in your law clerk's work blindly to a court, you wouldn't use a library that is unvetted to create documents. And I'm guessing that ChatGPT could give you a demand letter, but that the better answer is to have a vetted library of information from which the AI is pulling.
Absolutely. Like, put another way, the way I kind of describe it and describe ChatGPT's technology essentially is like ChatGPT. You can think of ChatGPT as like your regular household dog, right? Your regular household dog, and what you can expect of your household dog to do is like sit, stay, come, down, like basic commands like that. But if you want your dog to perform specialized tasks like a police dog or a service dog, a guide dog, it's going to require specialized training. And that's where we are the specialized training for ChatGPT essentially. So we give it the context that it needs to basically understand in terms of how to read and interpret medical records and how to transform that into summaries, all of that kind of stuff. We give it the context so that it can actually perform these specialized tasks within, the PI space, and specifically in terms of like the demand letters that we produce. So that's my analogy essentially.
And so tell me, give us the background. I mean, like you've come to the scene, but that this, we spoke a couple of years back when you were trying to figure out what was the path. Tell me about the story, the EvenUp story.
Yeah, so I mean, I remember speaking to you like about 3 years ago. I think it was late of 2020. But yeah, just in terms of how this all came together, really kind of serendipitous in terms of how the three co-founders came together. We all came from different backgrounds, different experiences, but all of those experiences really lent themselves well to helping us make this company a great success. And we all had our unique kind of reasons as to why we were fascinated in terms of what cases we're actually settling for. So personal injury lawsuits.
And from a top level, what were those three skill sets? I'm always curious about what was it that came together to make this happen?
Yeah, so like in terms of, for instance, my co-founder and our CEO, Rami. So Rami, his background, he was at an early stage startup that went from 0 to 50 million of annual recurring revenue. They got acquired. He became a tech investor. And then he started actually working at Google's autonomous vehicle unit, Waymo. And so over there, he got a lot of exposure in terms of how many motor vehicle accidents were happening each year. And that kind of piqued his interest. Sam, my co-founder and chief product officer, he was actually a former commercial litigator at a big law firm. And essentially, he did a lot of defense work, so insurance defense work for a serious personal injury lawsuits. And so essentially, there's another kind of experience there where he was actually the first, so he was counsel to the first litigation finance case presented to the Supreme Court of Canada. And so he was always interested in terms of knowing what a case would settle for, basically pricing the risk of these personal injury lawsuits. Myself, former consultant, and I started a previous company, so a VC-backed company in Silicon Valley in the education space. My personal story that kind of ties me to the mission of what we're doing here at EvenUp is it's actually a much sadder one. So essentially, my dad in 2004, he was involved in a catastrophic motor vehicle accident. And so that left our family, basically in shambles. Essentially, it was like a crazy case where, high-speed police chase where the police were actually chasing down a shooter. And this person actually ended up running into my dad, who was crossing the intersection, just trying to go to work in the morning, and it split my dad's car in half. And so, of course, over the next 3 years, as many attorneys would kind of know how this story plays out, but the insurance carriers were just lowballing the crap out of my family. And my mom was working multiple jobs just to put food on the table. And then ultimately what happened is my dad didn't want to see her working so hard. So we were crumbling financially. And so what happened was my dad took an early settlement, not really knowing what his case was worth. The representation that we had didn't really kind of give him any advice against the decision he was making. And ultimately we walked away with $200,000 for a family of 5. And I mean, $200,000 for 2 immigrant parents was a lot of money for them to look at. They're like, wow, this is more money than we ever saw at one moment in our life. But it was definitely not enough for a family of 5 to survive off of for the rest of our lives. And so it's kind of, this is where I see that serendipitous tie in terms of like that experience. I never looked back on this industry and was like, I'm going to be like Batman and solve this problem. But ultimately, it did make me more entrepreneurial, where it's led me down this path in life to meet the co-founders that I have today and start this business so that we can essentially prevent other families from going through the same struggle that we did, or try to help them get a better result.
Gotcha. So what was the light bulb moment where you had stuff, and I know early on you were looking at the funding component, but you guys seem to have doubled down on the demand component here. What was the light bulb moment as far as just figuring out that leveraging that there was a better mousetrap out there for demands?
For sure. In terms of kind of how we started, and as you referenced, like we started out with funding personal injury lawsuits. So building technology that basically helps underwrite and price the risk of these personal injury lawsuits. And essentially, we were trying to provide the most affordable kind of financing for these personal injury lawsuits to help them essentially gun for the maximum amount that they could settle for and the amount that those clients deserve. So extend that financial runway. And then by way of that, it was supposed to be a mechanism to gather as much data as possible in terms of understanding what cases we're selling for behind closed doors. So essentially be party to those cases and be privy to that information. That said, a lot of that data that we were acquiring at that time was kind of skewed. And obviously, it was a kind of more difficult approach in terms of gathering that data. And so one of the things that we tried to learn more about is how can we offer up our technology in terms of what we were using internally to underwrite these cases. How could we offer that to law firms like yourself? So actually, you were like the third law firm that we spoke to back in the day doing like the early research on this, but we were trying to help firms like figure out, okay, can we help you compute the damages for each element of loss, like pain and suffering, loss of earnings, loss of services, all of this kind of stuff. And what the conversations kind of led to is many folks like yourself encouraged us to basically look into demand packages. It's like the most valuable thing that you could do, not only in terms of analyzing these damages and telling us like, you know, what these damages are worth, but helping us draft this entire demand package, this legal document. That would be super helpful.
It was a huge pain point. It's a huge pain point for law firms.
Correct. And you know, I think a lot of law firms at the very beginning, they were like, they thought we were crazy. It was kind of a joke. It's like, you should just draft the whole demand package for us. And then they didn't really expect us to actually do that. And then we're like, why don't we try? And so we started down on this path. This is way before generative AI was even a thing, right? And essentially started down this path trying to build our own models in terms of essentially training machines to parse through the medical records, understand things like what are the injuries and the associated ICD codes, and draw that information out and essentially transform that into prose. Essentially, we were kind of on that path long before this ever began. And then when this generative AI stuff hit, it's just like, finally this moment where it's just like, we were on the right path in terms of how we were thinking about this. And then those models that
mixing, is there a human element to it, or is it, you know, how are you balancing the AI approach? Because this is the reason I ask is, you know, well, again, using this, you know, viral legal place where somebody did nothing with human elements, and obviously you're giving somebody a draft that they're going to be looking at their firm anyway, God willing. So right, they're not, hopefully not turning this over blindly. But with that, the whole point is it's close. Like, and the idea is there should be, you should be at the point where you're not missing, there's no fake case law. You know, you have everything you have should make sense. Is it perfect? No. But how are you mixing the AI technology with human elements before it gets back to a law firm?
For sure. So in terms of just how humans play a big role in this, so humans are in the loop. We always call this a human in the loop process. It's very much within the quality assurance kind of stage. And so every demand that we produce with our models, of which these models have been trained by people who actually know what they're doing. So whether that be former defense counsel, ex-claim adjusters, top paralegals, essentially nurses that help us label the critical pieces of information within these documents and train the AI to understand how to locate them and extract them. Every demand that we produce is reviewed by this team of folks. So essentially we call them legal operations or our EvenUp squadron, but essentially everything is reviewed before it goes out to the attorneys or the firms that we work with, because at the end of the day, our whole goal is to ensure that, you know, everything that we produce is quality, right? And you're relying on us to basically produce the highest of quality demands that, I mean, essentially in a way that you would have done it yourself if you had all the time in the world to do so. And so it is at the utmost importance for us to make sure that quality and turnaround times are, you know, basically maintained for our firms. And essentially, that's why we actually have this huge emphasis on quality assurance and having people within the US who have actually practiced within personal injury in this space, reviewing every single thing that the model is trained on, as well as all the outputs that come out of it.
Well, Ray, you were, you know, sort of ahead of the curve, hitting this really nicely here. Where do you see this going next? I mean, that's what everybody's trying to figure out, right? So, you know, from a marketing point of view, we are reticent, particularly with ChatGPT being sort of the forerunner, and that Google has no incentive to reward people for using a Microsoft product. That's me being the cynical person. But where do you, but there's so much stuff that, you know, at every level, we've tasked forth with both my law firm and the marketing company to sort of, where can we put AI in? Where can we test it? Where can we play with it? What excites you? What are the areas you think short-term and long-term we're going to see AI in the legal space?
Yeah, I guess speaking from our own point of view, we've, recently launched some pretty big products or features within our system. So of course, we're starting a lot of integrations with different practice management systems. So we actually kicked off the first kind of integrations with Liddy, and essentially there's a lot of things in store to come there. I can't mention all of them just because it's up and coming. But that said, this is, let me just say, it's more than just being able to request a demand out of at the click of a button from these practice management systems. So working with a lot of the leading practice management systems there to launch additional features that basically will leverage our AI in terms of helping you essentially do things like summarizing medical records, at the click of a button, or checking if there's any missing bills, records, or providers at the instance that you actually upload the records into the system. So things like that. There's a lot of things that are coming down the pipeline, but
and it makes sense.
Other things like
you see the just from the chat GPT, you see chat, and you see a number of these other bots that listen to webinars and such, and the ability to organize that information is amazing. What I keep saying is it's cool in its raw form. The home run is when you have that, when it really knows what it's doing and where it needs to find stuff. Because again, as we've seen 4.0, it's pretty darn good. The fact that you're able to sort of say, hey, these are the summaries we want. Let's work to make sure that these salient points are always pulled out. As you start mapping it, the results have got to get scary good.
And this is actually a good point to mention. So we've obviously actually released our own personal injury AI legal assistant. So it's called Liddy. And so it's very similar in terms of how you would prompt ChatGPT to do things, but Liddy is actually experienced in PI. And so you can actually have Liddy produce the facts narrative within your demand for you at the click of a button after just giving it a few prompts, or you can have it summarize some key pieces of the medical records for you. But Liddy is constantly evolving, and we have a lot of exciting changes coming down the pipeline.
Is this a standalone
product,
or is this something that only EvenUp clients have access to?
Currently, it's a product that only EvenUp customers have access to, and so they're of course giving us a lot of feedback in terms of what they want to see Liddy be able to perform for them, kind of be like their Iron Man suit. But the really cool thing, and this is actually one thing that I feel like folks kind of misunderstand, and the reason why I wanted to paint that analogy of how ChatGPT works. There's a lot of these solutions, these kind of chat bots or AI assistants that are coming out that they all look the same, right? You can all you can ask them to do things, and then they'll be able to produce some sort of result. But one thing that I encourage folks to do is just make sure that they're checking in terms of what solutions they're using are actually called ChatGPT wrappers versus solutions that are more similar to ours, where it's actually ChatGPT integrated with a database of very kind of subject matter, specific subject matter expertise, that database of knowledge that trains it to do what it needs to do in the right way. And so the ChatGPT wrappers, there's a lot of ways that you can actually test if what you're using is a ChatGPT wrapper. So for example, there's some tools where you can see it's was this output produced by just ChatGPT alone? And so if you feed that output through there.
Which tools do you like best for that? Because that's one of the things that concerns me is that the commercially available ones are not nearly as good as what, again, I'm putting on my marketing hat for a second, right? So from the marketing world, we could get rid of writers. No, Google knows what is AI created content for the moment, but the consumer-based ones are not as sophisticated, clear as what Google has behind the curtain. What do you like? What are you using to determine it?
Oh, I don't have any off the top of my head, but what I'll do is I'll produce a list for you that actually link in the description.
No, absolutely. It's one of those areas that is in the marketing world is so needed. Just like when we started, we had Copyscape was a big deal because, okay, now we can tell whether or not somebody's taking this from somebody else's website. What we want to make sure is the analogy in the marketing space is the spammy links of about 10, 15 years ago, when you could basically put crap links out. They worked. Google said, don't do it. And then eventually it penalized the sites. I'm hearing rumblings, and they're all anecdotal, that Google really can tell what is produced this way. What concerns me, like the piece that I'm waiting to sort of see this narrow, is that most of the commercially available ones right now are just inconsistent. I've seen stuff where we've written it by hand and it tells us it's done by bots. It's not like anything else. It's catching up. It'll figure it out, but it isn't quite, ready for prime time. So to me, selfishly, I need to get that in place to protect myself. Because the last thing I ever want to do is be caught with my pants down where somebody's like, hey, you're putting ChatGPT content on my site. I'm like, you're only as good as the humans you have behind you, and making sure that we do everything. Now, obviously we're editing, it's not going up as is, but Google could tell, oh, that's 80% ChatGPT, and you decided to put some lipstick on it.
That's absolutely correct. And then I guess just in terms of the field of legal, the field of law, it's even more important because that the story that you referenced at the beginning, the lawyer in New York that basically cited these fake cases essentially that's where hallucinations come from. If you're just using ChatGPT alone and it's not working off of a specialized database,
but that's the extreme, right? Let's get rid of the extreme.
Right.
Let's go to the real. Look, Westlaw is now putting AI processes in place. There's no doubt. I mean, Fastcase got sold or acquired or whatever in order simply to be able to have a trusted library. So it's coming. But I want to conclude with this. We see the things right now. There's the stuff that's in the foreground, right? That you're there. Okay, yes, we're gonna have summaries done. We're gonna have demands done. There's gonna be a lot of stuff. But what are the things that you don't know how it's gonna be done now, but you bet that with the speed that we're going, it's not going to be long before this or that, that the AI is going to be able to get us to stuff that's beyond that. Are we going to get to the point where clients, you have chatbots that are probably better than the international labor that does the AI, that does the chatting? How long before a client experience with a law firm is there? What are the pieces that you think that it's hard to get labor? Are you going to have an option of getting bot answers versus speaking to somebody? We're what's not tomorrow, next month, but what's 2025?
Oh, I absolutely believe that this is all of this technology that's spinning up today is going to be able to help us deliver better client experiences for sure. In the ways that we can hook it up either to basically communicate via text with your clients and extract critical pieces of information from them in terms of kind of like a survey format, but in a more human way, as if somebody was actually texting them these questions and trying to understand how did this accident kind of turn your life upside down? What are things that you can no longer do today that you used to be able to do before? It's having AI actually drive those questions that people are actually, speaking with their clients over the phone about. That's going to be something that I see in the very near future, something that AI can basically serve as that Iron Man suit for. And then that's also going to help us basically not only deliver more of a human experience and a higher quality experience for our clients in terms of doing everything that we can to get them the requisite information that we need to basically help work up the value of their case. It's also going to facilitate better word of mouth and referrals and just result in happier clients. So
well, and my guess is that whether it's EvenUp or somebody else, that we're seeing the ability for responses to emails, even from ChatGPT, pretty strong. Not that it doesn't need to be edited, but I wouldn't be surprised if the protocol of firms by the end of 2024 is to have an AI response generated as a draft from emails sent that are then approved by a case manager, and that the case manager will not be drafting responses, but that there will be a proposed response that somebody will read that thing, make sure it's right, but that you will be editing, not drafting responses to emails before we know it.
Absolutely. I actually see, I should link you an article. I believe Salesforce is actually already doing that right now. And so, of course, I think that a lot of folks within marketing and sales, they are kind of looking into that and taking advantage of technologies like that. But it's only a matter of time where law firms can be basically leveraging the same things.
And look,
so,
law firms are going to have to be the last to adopt. But when you look at stuff like you're on vacation, you're a tour operator, and you want to be able to book things. And I remember I was in Hawaii for a mastermind earlier this year, and we ended up doing an excursion with a guy. He was a great guy, took us out. He had surf lessons and paddle boarding on the north end of Oahu. But like, he's sitting there on the paddleboard taking calls from potential people. And there's nothing better than the phone. I get that. But if you could go and do 90% of what needs to happen with the basic information, just like we're seeing the chatbots now, I think as that gap goes, you'll come for the personal piece, but that interpersonal piece, the non-interpersonal piece is going to have a lot of pre-form, and the idea that it's between nothing and that, it is not far away.
I absolutely agree. The way I describe it is just putting more of a human, like AI helping us introduce more of a human element back into our practices, not taking away from the human experience, if anything. That's what a lot of people tend to believe, but I believe it's the opposite.
Well, Ray, this is exciting times. Congrats for you and your team at EvenUp. I appreciate you making the time today. I know you're real busy, and can't wait to see what's in store next.
Thank you so much, Seth. I really appreciate you letting me tell the story here.
Absolutely. Catch up soon.
Thank you for tuning in to the SEO Insider with Seth Price. Be sure to check back next week for fresh insights into building your brand's online presence. Episodes are available to stream directly on BluShark Digital's website.